In the vast darkness of the Pacific Ocean, where radar screens painted ghostly green pictures of the unknown, a single radio transmission would change everything. Admiral Harrison Mitchell had spent 37 years commanding naval operations, weathering storms both literal and political. He had faced down enemy submarines, negotiated with hostile nations, and earned the respect of every sailor under his command. But, on this particular October evening in 1987, as he stood in the command center of the USS Constellation, something would happen that would shake him to his very core. The radio crackled with static, then cleared to reveal a voice that shouldn't exist. A call sign that had been buried in classified files for over 4 decades. A ghost from the deepest, darkest chapter of naval history that was supposed to stay dead and forgotten forever. When that transmission came through, Admiral Mitchell's confident smile vanished. His hands began to tremble. Because he knew exactly what Iron Ghost meant, and he knew that whoever was using that call sign held secrets that could destroy careers, topple governments, and rewrite the history books. This is the true story of 3 men whose paths crossed in the most impossible way, revealing a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of military command and changed the course of naval warfare forever. The October wind whipped across the deck of the USS Constellation as Admiral Harrison Mitchell reviewed the evening's intelligence reports. At 58 years old, Mitchell commanded respect from every corner of the Pacific Fleet. His silver hair was perfectly groomed despite the ocean breeze, and his uniform bore the weight of 3 decades of distinguished service. Tonight, like many others, he stood in the ship's command center surrounded by the soft glow of radar screens and the quiet hum of sophisticated electronics. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen approached with the daily communications log, her footsteps echoing against the metal floor. She had served under Mitchell for 2 years and had never seen him rattled by anything. The Admiral had a reputation for maintaining calm under pressure, whether facing Soviet submarine threats during the Cold War or navigating the complex politics of military command. "Sir, we've received some unusual radio chatter tonight," Chen reported, handing him the thick folder of transcribed communications. "Most of it appears to be routine fishing vessel traffic, but there are a few transmissions our analysts can't quite place." Mitchell nodded, opening the folder with practiced efficiency. His eyes scanned the pages of coded messages, frequency reports, and signal intercepts that painted a picture of activity across thousands of square miles of Pacific Ocean. This was routine work for a fleet commander, the daily task of monitoring the invisible highway of radio waves that connected ships, aircraft, and shore installations across the world's largest ocean. The Admiral's attention was drawn to a series of technical reports about a disabled research vessel approximately 200 miles southeast of their position. The ship, designated as the MV Meridian, had been broadcasting distress signals intermittently throughout the day. According to the reports, the vessel carried a crew of 12 marine biologists conducting deep-sea research on ocean thermal layers. "Have we established contact with this Meridian vessel?" Mitchell asked, pointing to the relevant section of the report. "Yes, sir, we've been in touch with their communications officer. They report engine trouble and are requesting assistance with repairs. Nothing that appears urgent, but they've asked for a technical specialist if we can spare one." Mitchell considered this request. The Constellation was currently engaged in routine training exercises, and helping a civilian research vessel would provide good practical experience for his crew. It was exactly the kind of humanitarian mission that looked favorable in official reports and demonstrated the Navy's commitment to maritime safety. "Very well, prepare a small technical team. We'll dispatch them by helicopter tomorrow morning if weather conditions permit," he decided, making a note in the margin of the report. As the evening progressed, Mitchell found himself drawn to the large windows overlooking the ship's deck. The ocean stretched endlessly in all directions, its surface reflecting the last traces of sunset. He often spent these quiet moments reflecting on his career and the responsibilities that came with commanding such a powerful vessel. The Constellation carried over 5,000 personnel, and their safety was his primary concern. His thoughts were interrupted by Chief Petty Officer Rodriguez, who approached with evident concern written across his weathered face. Rodriguez had served on naval vessels for over 20 years, and his experience made him invaluable for identifying potential problems before they became serious issues. "Admiral, we're receiving some strange radio traffic that doesn't match our frequency logs," Rodriguez reported, holding a headset in his hand. The communications team thinks you should hear this directly. Mitchell followed Rodriguez to the main radio station, where 3 technicians were clustered around banks of sophisticated monitoring equipment. The room buzzed with electronic activity, speakers occasionally crackling with fragments of distant conversations in multiple languages. This was the nerve center for all communications flowing to and from the constellation. Senior communications specialist James Park looked up as they approached. He was a thin man in his early 30s, known for his ability to identify and decode even the most obscure radio transmissions. His desk was covered with charts showing radio frequencies, signal strength measurements, and handwritten notes tracking various broadcasting sources. "Sir, we've been monitoring standard maritime channels all day, but about an hour ago we started picking up transmissions on frequencies that aren't supposed to be active," Park explained, adjusting several dials on his equipment. "The signals are coming from the same general area as that disabled research vessel, but they're using transmission protocols I've never seen before." Mitchell leaned closer to examine the equipment readings. The display showed strong, clear signals coming from coordinates that roughly matched the position of the MV meridian. However, the frequency bands being used were typically reserved for military communications, not civilian research vessels. "Could this be interference from our own systems?" Mitchell asked, considering various technical explanations for the unusual readings. "That's what we thought initially, sir, but we've run diagnostics on all our equipment and everything checks out normal. These signals are definitely coming from an external source, and they're quite powerful. Whoever is broadcasting has access to military-grade transmission equipment." This information added a new dimension to the situation with the disabled research vessel. Mitchell's experience had taught him to be suspicious of coincidences, especially when they involved unusual radio activity in international waters. The combination of a disabled ship requesting assistance and mysterious military frequency transmissions from the same location warranted careful investigation. "Are you able to decode any of the message content?" he asked Park. "That's where it gets really interesting, sir. The transmissions appear to be encrypted using older military codes, possibly dating back to World War II or the early Cold War period. Our computer systems can't automatically decrypt them, but some of the formatting looks familiar from historical communications protocols." Mitchell felt a slight chill that had nothing to do with the ocean wind. Military encryption codes from that era were supposed to be obsolete, replaced decades ago by more sophisticated systems. The fact that someone was using such old protocols suggested either a serious security breach or something even more concerning. He spent the next hour reviewing technical specifications and historical communication records with his senior staff. The deeper they dug into the mystery, the more questions arose. The MV Meridian's registration showed it was owned by a legitimate marine research foundation, but their supposed research mission didn't require the kind of powerful communication equipment that could broadcast on military frequencies. As midnight approached, Admiral Mitchell made the decision to alter their course slightly, bringing the constellation closer to the coordinates where both the disabled vessel and the mysterious radio signals were located. He wanted his ship in a position to respond quickly if the situation developed into something more serious than a simple mechanical breakdown. The change in course was subtle, disguised as part of their ongoing training exercises. To most of the crew, it would appear to be a routine navigation adjustment. However, Mitchell quietly increased the ship's alert status and ordered additional personnel to monitor communications channels throughout the night. Lieutenant Commander Chin coordinated these preparations with characteristic efficiency, ensuring that all department heads were briefed on the potential need for rapid response. The Constellation's crew had trained extensively for various emergency scenarios, and they executed the heightened alert procedures smoothly. As the night deepened, Mitchell found sleep elusive. He remained in the command center, monitoring incoming reports and studying nautical charts of the surrounding area. The ocean that had seemed peaceful earlier now felt charged with possibility and potential danger. His instincts, honed by decades of military service, told him that tomorrow would bring revelations that could change everything. The mysterious radio transmissions continued throughout the night, following patterns that suggested organized communication rather than random technical interference. Each intercepted signal added to the growing puzzle, painting a picture of deliberate activity hidden beneath the cover of a maritime research mission. Admiral Mitchell had built his career on making decisive choices based on incomplete information, but this situation felt different. The combination of old military codes, suspicious timing, and the isolated location created a perfect storm of uncertainty. As dawn approached, he knew that the coming day would test not only his command abilities but also his understanding of secrets that the military had kept buried for decades. The radio equipment continued its quiet monitoring, capturing fragments of conversations in codes that shouldn't exist, from sources that claimed to be conducting innocent scientific research. Whatever was happening on that disabled research vessel, Admiral Mitchell was determined to uncover the truth, even if it led him into the darkest corners of naval history. Dawn broke over the Pacific with unusual clarity, revealing calm seas and perfect visibility extending to the horizon. Admiral Mitchell had managed only 2 hours of sleep, spending most of the night in the command center monitoring the mysterious radio transmissions. As the sun climbed higher, the signals had grown stronger and more frequent, suggesting that whatever was happening aboard the MV Meridian was reaching a critical phase. The helicopter crew completed their pre-flight preparations as Mitchell reviewed the mission parameters one final time. Lieutenant Sarah Hoffman would pilot the aircraft, accompanied by Chief Engineering Specialist Marcus Webb and Communications Technician David Kim. Their official mission remained simple: provide technical assistance to a disabled research vessel. However, Mitchell had privately instructed them to conduct a thorough assessment of the ship's actual capabilities and personnel. "Remember, this is primarily a humanitarian mission," Mitchell told the three-person team as they gathered in the briefing room. "However, I want detailed observations of everything you see aboard that vessel. Pay particular attention to their communication equipment and any personnel who don't fit the profile of marine research scientists." Chief Webb nodded, understanding the unspoken implications. His 22 years of naval engineering experience had taught him to recognize military hardware disguised as civilian equipment. If the MV Meridian was operating sophisticated transmission gear, he would identify it quickly. The helicopter departed the constellation at precisely 800 hours, carrying the team toward coordinates that had become increasingly significant overnight. During the 40-minute flight, Technician Kim monitored radio frequencies, documenting the continued stream of encrypted transmissions originating from their destination. From the air, the MV Meridian appeared exactly as described in their intelligence reports. The vessel measured approximately 120 feet in length, with the white hull and equipment-laden deck typical of ocean research ships. However, as they circled for landing, several details caught the trained eyes of the naval personnel. The ship's communication array was far more extensive than necessary for standard research operations. Multiple satellite dishes and antenna arrays covered the upper deck, suggesting capabilities well beyond what civilian marine biologists would require. Additionally, the crew members visible on deck moved with military precision, arranging landing equipment and securing loose materials with efficiency that spoke of extensive training. Lieutenant Hoffman set the helicopter down smoothly on the vessel's landing pad, a reinforced section of deck that could accommodate aircraft significantly larger than typically required for research operations. As the rotors wound down, the naval team was greeted by Dr. Elizabeth Cartwright, who introduced herself as the expedition leader. Dr. Cartwright appeared to be in her early 50s, with graying hair and the weathered complexion of someone who had spent considerable time at sea. Her credentials seemed authentic enough, and she spoke knowledgeably about deep-sea thermal research. However, Chief Webb noticed that her hands showed calluses consistent with operating heavy machinery rather than handling delicate scientific instruments. "We're grateful for your assistance," Dr. Cartwright explained as she led them toward the engine room. "Our primary generator has been experiencing intermittent failures, and we lack the specialized knowledge to diagnose the problem properly." The engine room visit provided the first concrete evidence that the MV Meridian was not what it claimed to be. While the vessel did possess standard marine engines appropriate for a research ship, additional power systems were clearly visible behind partially concealed access panels. Chief Webb recognized military-grade electrical systems capable of supporting much more sophisticated equipment than scientific research would require. More significantly, the engine room contained sound-dampening materials and vibration isolation systems typically found on naval vessels designed for stealth operations. These modifications would make the ship nearly invisible to sonar detection, a capability that served no purpose for legitimate marine research. While Chief Webb examined the mechanical systems, Technician Kim was invited to review the ship's communication equipment. The radio room exceeded his expectations for sophisticated hardware, containing encryption devices, signal amplifiers, and frequency scanners that represented millions of dollars in specialized equipment. The most revealing discovery came when Kim noticed a partially concealed control panel bearing manufacturer markings from companies that exclusively supplied military contracts. The equipment included satellite communication systems capable of maintaining contact with shore installations anywhere in the world, far beyond the requirements of a temporary research mission. During their technical assessment, the team encountered several crew members whose behavior raised additional questions. While some personnel genuinely appeared to be marine scientists, others displayed the bearing and communication patterns of military personnel attempting to blend into civilian roles. One particularly suspicious individual introduced himself as Dr. James Morrison, claiming expertise in deep-sea geology. However, his knowledge of geological processes seemed superficial, and he repeatedly used nautical terminology more appropriate for naval operations than scientific research. His physical conditioning and alert awareness of his surroundings suggested extensive military training. The most significant revelation came when Technician Kim accidentally intercepted a brief radio transmission that hadn't been properly encrypted. The message contained references to operational security and mission parameters, language that clearly indicated military rather than scientific objectives. As the morning progressed, the naval team gathered intelligence that painted a picture of an elaborate deception. The MV Meridian was undoubtedly engaged in classified military operations disguised as civilian research. The question remained, which military organization was responsible, and what were their actual objectives? Chief Webb discovered additional evidence during his inspection of the ship's lower decks. Concealed compartments contained equipment that appeared designed for underwater operations, including what looked like components for submarine communication systems. The level of sophistication suggested involvement by a major military power with advanced technological capabilities. The breakthrough came when Lieutenant Hoffman noticed an older crew member who seemed oddly familiar. Captain Robert Hayes, introduced as a marine biology consultant, bore a strong resemblance to photographs she remembered from naval history books. After careful observation, she became convinced that this man was actually Commander Robert Hayes, a decorated World War II submarine officer who had officially died in 1943. This impossible identification sent chills through the entire team. If her suspicions were correct, they had stumbled upon something far more significant than a simple intelligence-gathering operation. The implications suggested connections to some of the most classified chapters in naval warfare history. As their technical assessment continued, the team began noticing subtle signs that their presence was making the crew increasingly nervous. Conversations stopped when they approached, and several personnel began monitoring their movements with obvious concern. The atmosphere aboard the MV Meridian shifted from friendly cooperation to barely concealed tension. Dr. Cartwright's demeanor changed as well, becoming more formal and less forthcoming with information. She began steering the naval team away from certain areas of the ship, claiming safety concerns or ongoing research activities that couldn't be interrupted. The mounting evidence convinced the team that they needed to return to the Constellation immediately and report their findings to Admiral Mitchell. However, their departure was delayed by Dr. Cartwright's insistence that they remain for lunch and additional consultation about the generator repairs. During this forced delay, Technician Kim made one final discovery that confirmed their worst suspicions. While supposedly checking communication equipment connections, he discovered a hidden transmitter operating on frequencies reserved for the most classified military communications. The device was actively broadcasting encrypted messages using protocols he recognized from his advanced training in electronic warfare. More disturbing still, the transmissions appeared to be coordinating with multiple other sources, suggesting that the MV Meridian was part of a much larger operation involving several vessels or installations. The scope of whatever was happening extended far beyond a single disguised research ship. As afternoon approached, the team prepared for departure amid increasingly obvious surveillance by the ship's crew. Several personnel had positioned themselves strategically around the landing area, and Dr. Cartwright insisted on personally inspecting their helicopter before allowing takeoff. The return flight to the Constellation provided an opportunity for the team to compare their observations and reach preliminary conclusions. All three were convinced that they had encountered a major classified operation involving personnel who should have been dead for decades and equipment that shouldn't exist outside the most secret military installations. Lieutenant Hoffman piloted the aircraft with increased urgency, eager to deliver their intelligence to Admiral Mitchell before whatever was happening aboard the MV Meridian entered its next phase. The encrypted radio transmissions continued throughout their flight, suggesting that their visit had triggered increased activity rather than the routine technical assistance they had supposedly provided. As the constellation came into view, the team prepared to brief Admiral Mitchell on discoveries that would challenge everything he thought he knew about naval operations and the true extent of military secrecy. The disabled research vessel had revealed itself to be something far more dangerous and significant than anyone had anticipated. Admiral Mitchell listened intently as his team delivered their shocking report in the secure briefing room aboard the Constellation. The implications of their discoveries aboard the MV Meridian sent his mind racing through decades of classified knowledge, searching for connections that might explain what they had encountered. The suggestion that Commander Robert Hayes, officially killed in action in 1943, might still be alive challenged everything he understood about naval history and military records. As the briefing concluded, Mitchell made the decision that would change everything. He ordered communications specialist Park to attempt direct contact with the MV Meridian using standard maritime frequencies, hoping to gather additional intelligence while maintaining the appearance of routine follow-up on their technical assistance mission. The radio crackled to life as Park established contact with the research vessel. Dr. Cartwright's voice came through clearly, thanking them again for their help and reporting that their generator problems had been resolved. However, her tone carried an undercurrent of tension that suggested their visit had created complications she was struggling to manage. MV Meridian, this is USS Constellation, Park transmitted. We're glad to hear your repairs were successful. Our engineering team noted some unusual equipment configurations during their assessment. Are you conducting any specialized research that might require military-grade communication systems? The silence that followed stretched for nearly 30 seconds, far longer than normal radio protocol would suggest. When Dr. Cartwright finally responded, her carefully chosen words confirmed the team's suspicions about the vessel's true nature. USS Constellation, our research involves deep-sea communication with remote monitoring stations. Some of our equipment may appear more sophisticated than typical civilian installations, but I assure you everything we're doing falls within approved parameters for marine research operations. Admiral Mitchell took the microphone from Park, deciding that a direct approach might yield more information. His years of experience had taught him that sometimes confronting deception head-on was the most effective way to uncover truth. MV Meridian, this is Admiral Harrison Mitchell, commanding officer of the USS Constellation. I've reviewed the technical assessment conducted by my personnel, and I have concerns about some of the equipment and procedures we observed aboard your vessel. I'm requesting permission to conduct a more thorough inspection under maritime safety protocols. The response came not from Dr. Cartwright, but from a male voice that spoke with unmistakable military authority despite attempts to maintain a civilian tone. Admiral Mitchell, this is Captain Hayes, Senior Operations Coordinator for the Meridian Research Project. I believe there may be some misunderstanding about the nature of our work here. Perhaps we should discuss this through more appropriate channels. The mention of Captain Hayes confirmed Lieutenant Hoffman's impossible identification, sending shockwaves through everyone present in the communications room. Admiral Mitchell felt his hands begin to tremble as the implications became clear. If Robert Hayes was indeed alive and active, it meant that some of the most classified operations in naval history were continuing under circumstances that challenged official records and established security protocols. Captain Hayes, Mitchell responded, his voice carefully controlled despite his internal turmoil, I think it would be beneficial for us to meet in person to discuss your research operations. I'm prepared to come aboard the Meridian myself if necessary to resolve any confusion about your mission parameters. Another extended silence followed, during which the crew of the Constellation could hear muffled conversations in the background of the transmission. When Hayes finally responded, his words carried implications that extended far beyond their current situation. Admiral, I appreciate your concern for maritime safety, but I must inform you that our operations fall under jurisdictions that extend beyond standard naval authority. I'm going to need to place a call to some very senior people before we can proceed with any additional inspections. This response confirmed Admiral Mitchell's worst fears about the situation. The reference to jurisdictions beyond standard naval authorities suggested involvement by intelligence agencies or black operations programs that operated outside normal military command structures. Such programs had existed throughout the Cold War, but Mitchell had assumed they had been shut down or brought under proper oversight years ago. The radio fell silent as Hayes ended the transmission, leaving the command crew to contemplate the extraordinary situation they had uncovered. Admiral Mitchell ordered increased monitoring of all frequencies while he considered his next steps. The discovery of what appeared to be an active covert operation in international waters presented both professional obligations and personal dangers that required careful navigation. Over the next hour, the Constellation's communication specialists detected a dramatic increase in encrypted radio traffic originating from the MV Meridian's position. The signals were being transmitted to multiple destinations using satellite links, suggesting that news of their encounter was rapidly reaching the highest levels of whatever organization was responsible for the operation. The first response came through official naval channels approximately 90 minutes after Hayes had promised to contact his superiors. Admiral Mitchell received a priority message from Pacific Fleet Command ordering him to discontinue all contact with the MV Meridian and proceed immediately to his originally assigned training area. The message was brief and unambiguous, but it carried the unmistakable weight of orders issued at the highest levels of naval command. More significantly, it included classification codes that indicated involvement by intelligence agencies Mitchell had never encountered during his decades of service. However, before Mitchell could fully process the implications of these orders, Communications Specialist Park detected an incoming transmission on a frequency that shouldn't have existed in any official military database. The signal was strong and clear, using transmission protocols that predated modern encryption systems by several decades. USS Constellation, this is Iron Ghost calling USS Constellation. Admiral Mitchell, please respond on this frequency immediately. We need to talk. The call sign Iron Ghost hit Admiral Mitchell like a physical blow, causing him to grip the edge of the communication console for support. His face went pale as memories flooded back from the early years of his naval career when he had been read into some of the most classified programs in military history. Iron Ghost was a call sign that officially didn't exist, had never existed, and was supposed to remain buried in files so classified that even acknowledging their existence was a federal crime. It belonged to Operation Deep Echo, a World War II program so secret that fewer than 50 people had ever known its true scope and objectives. The operation had involved experimental submarine technology, advanced communication systems, and personnel who had been officially declared killed in action to maintain security. Admiral Mitchell had learned about Deep Echo during a single briefing early in his career, when he had been considered for assignment to its successor program. The briefing had lasted less than an hour, but it had revealed the existence of military capabilities and operational methods that challenged conventional understanding of what was possible during wartime. More importantly, he had been told that Operation Deep Echo had been permanently terminated in 1945, with all personnel either reassigned or officially deceased. The use of the Iron Ghost call sign meant that either someone had gained access to files that should have been destroyed decades ago, or Operation Deep Echo had never actually ended. Both possibilities carried implications that threatened to overturn fundamental assumptions about naval history and ongoing military operations. "This is Admiral Mitchell responding to Iron Ghost," he transmitted, his voice barely steady despite years of training in crisis management. "State your identity and explain how you have access to that call sign." The response came in a voice that sounded impossibly familiar, carrying the distinctive accent and speech patterns of someone from an earlier generation of naval officers. "Admiral, this is Commander Robert Hayes, USS Thresher, operating under Deep Echo protocols established in 1943. I believe it's time we had a conversation about some things that have remained hidden for far too long." The mention of the USS Thresher added another impossible element to an already surreal situation. The Thresher had been an experimental submarine that officially sank during trials in 1943, taking all hands with it. The vessel had been designed to test advanced stealth technology and extended underwater operations, representing the cutting edge of wartime submarine development. If Hayes was indeed transmitting from the Thresher, it meant that one of the most advanced submarines ever built had been operating in secret for over 4 decades. The implications for naval warfare, technological development, and international security were staggering. Commander Hayes, assuming you are who you claim to be, I need to understand what's been happening out here and why my personnel encountered your operation disguised as civilian research, Mitchell transmitted, abandoning all pretense of normal military protocol. Admiral, what you've stumbled upon is the continuation of research that began during the darkest days of World War II. We've been developing technologies and capabilities that your regular Navy couldn't even imagine, all while officially remaining dead to maintain operational security. The work we're doing has implications for national security that extend far beyond what any surface fleet commander could understand. This revelation confirmed Admiral Mitchell's worst fears about the scope and duration of whatever classified program was operating under the cover of the MV Meridian. The existence of advanced military technology hidden from mainstream naval forces represented a level of compartmentalization that challenged basic assumptions about how the military operated and who held ultimate authority over American naval assets. As the conversation continued, Hayes gradually revealed details about an ongoing research program that had been operating continuously since 1943, developing submarine technology decades ahead of anything in the official Navy inventory. The program had maintained its cover through elaborate deceptions, including the fake deaths of key personnel and the creation of false historical records. The Iron Ghost call sign represented just one element of a vast network of covert operations that had been influencing naval development and international relations for over 40 years. Admiral Mitchell realized that his encounter with the MV Meridian had exposed him to secrets that powerful people had killed to protect, and that his own career and, possibly his life now hung in the balance. As the sun set over the Pacific, Admiral Mitchell faced the most difficult decision of his naval career, whether to follow official orders to abandon his investigation, or to pursue the truth about Operation Deep Echo regardless of the personal consequences. The choice would determine not only his own future, but the fate of military secrets that had shaped the course of history from the shadows for nearly half a century.